Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. First guest of the evening has not been on in a long time. The host of the Doug Siravo Show. He's doing some fine work, and I was on his show a couple of weeks ago, and it's the one and only Doug Siravo. How are you doing on this Thursday evening?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me on. I just finished up my show with myself and the boys.
Yes, and I had a good time on your show a few weeks ago. That was a lot of fun. So, the Stanley Cup Finals are underway, and the Golden Knights are up 2-0 on the Florida Panthers. What are your thoughts on the series so far?
Well, I think Vegas has outplayed the Florida Panthers, but it's Vegas. A lot of teams struggle in Vegas. So for me, it all varies on tonight on how the series is going. If Florida finds a way to win this game, I think they can carry the momentum into Game 4 and take Game 4 and even up the series. I still think Florida wins this series in 7, but that's only if they win tonight. If they lose tonight, then I see Vegas winning this series in 5.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Tonight's an important swing game, and Vegas, to me, is very unpredictable in these playoffs. Like, Game 3 of the Dallas series is a really good example. Everybody thought that Dallas was going to win that game and get back in the series, but no, Vegas goes up 3-0. Game 5 in that same series, everybody thinks Vegas is going to close out. No, Dallas forces a Game 6. So, I have no idea what we're getting tonight, and the Florida Panthers are very good. As we know, with their backs against the wall, as they showed in the first round against Boston. But they really haven't had adversity in the 2 rounds prior to this one. So I'm interested to see how they will respond. So I actually do think that the Panthers can come back. It sounds like you're pretty confident as well. Matt Tkachuk, to me, it's the favorite for the Conn Smythe Trophy if Florida wins. Do you see, say your scenario plays out and Florida wins in 7, do you see anybody other than Tkachuk winning it? Maybe Bobrovsky, even though he had a terrible game too?
Well, I think Bobrovsky would still win it just because it normally goes to the goalie. You look in prior years, Quick won it, Jean-Sebastian Chagrin won it. But most of the time it goes to the big name, Crosby, Makar, Ovechkin. Ryan O'Reilly won it. But I think if Florida finds a way to win this series, it varies on who has the bigger impact in this series. That's how I would vote. I don't vote based on the first 3 rounds. I would vote based on the based on the Stanley Cup Final. So whoever has the bigger impact in the Stanley Cup Final, I would go with them. But I think based on what they're saying, I think it would be Matthew Tkachuk based on the favorite.
Yes, I would agree with that, and he's been their best player in this run. And let's say Vegas wins the series. Do you think it's either Adin Hill or Jonathan Marchessault or somebody different?
It's got to be Jonathan Marchessault. The guy's been scoring. I think he has like 10 goals or something, or 9 goals in like his last 10 games. So I got to go with Marshy.
I say Marshy too. He's been absolutely on fire, and he had 2 goals the other day as well. How do you like how Jack Eichel's fit in with this team? And it's funny because he hasn't scored yet in the Stanley Cup Final. I think that this team really suits him well.
Well, it finally came in today. I got my Jack Eichel 2023 Stanley Cup Final jersey. I got my biggest Eichel jersey with the Stanley Cup patch. I was always a big fan of Eichel. I've been searching for an Eichel Buffalo jersey for years, but I'm glad I got this one. Eichel was supposed to be a game changer for Buffalo, that face of the franchise. But it just didn't work out for him. He goes to a team like Vegas, and he's thriving there. Vegas fits for Jack Eichel, and Eichel fits for Vegas. Without Jack Eichel, I do not think Vegas goes to the Stanley Cup Final this year. They had those key pieces, but a lot of injuries within the goalie position. Jack Eichel, to me, he could even be a favorite for the Conn Smythe Trophy if he gets on the board in the Stanley Cup Final.
Yes, I would agree with that, but I would still go with Marchessault because of how impactful he's been, not just in this series, but in the playoffs as a whole. But I agree with you with your voting strategy. You vote based on the finals, just like it is in the other sports. So I would say Marchessault, despite him being great in the playoffs, he's been great in this series as well. Bruce Cassidy, another Vegas subplot is that he was the coach of the Bruins, and then he got fired, and now he's here in Vegas and takes them to the Stanley Cup Final in the same playoff where Boston loses in round one, blowing the 3-1 lead to Florida, who Cassidy's team is facing. So, what do you make of Bruce Cassidy's coaching performance in the playoffs? I think he's been outstanding.
I think he's been one of the best coaching hires outside of there was another coach that went to a team that they've seen a lot of progress and change. Not Boston, but there was someone else. But Bruce Cassidy, he's had that experience in the Stanley Cup Final. He's had his experience in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He knows what it takes to win the Cup. He lost in 7 games against St. Louis Blues a few years ago. But they got the experience within Barbashev. They got the experience from Pietrangelo. So, like I said with Eichel, Bruce Cassidy is a good fit for Vegas.
Yeah, he's an excellent fit there. And the subplot of the series also is that, don't forget, last year, Florida won the President's Trophy. Andrew Burnett was their head coach, and at the time, I thought they made a mistake to let him go, but even that looks like a wash now. I think Paul Maurice has done a good job this year as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And Maurice, obviously, former coach of the Jets.
Paul Maurice.
Yeah, it was Paul Maurice, but even though that team was good with Andrew Burnett, who's obviously now going to be the coach at Nashville, and I think that's a big loss for your team's coaching staff. We'll get to the Devils in a little bit, but yeah, that's another one. And then Pete DeBoer goes to Dallas, and they're in the Western Finals, although they were in the Stanley Cup Final in 2020. And yet another funny subplot of the playoffs, Pete DeBoer, former Vegas coach, loses to Vegas, ironically enough, in the conference finals. So this Vegas run has had a lot of crazy subplots in it, and I think the Jack Eichel one is probably my favorite subplot. What's your favorite little subplot to this Vegas run?
I think it's playing against their former coach, Pete DeBoer.
You think it is going against DeBoer in the last round? That's a good one. I mean, the Florida Panthers being there is a fun one, too.
The team DeBoer goes to, they go to the Stanley Cup, 2012 first year with the Devils, 16 first year with the Sharks, and first year with Dallas, but, he fell short.
Yeah, and then he was in the conference finals with Vegas, too, in was it the COVID year? The bubble?
Season, and that's when they lost to Dallas.
Yeah, and they lost to Dallas. That's funny. That's right. They did lose to Dallas that year. So that's another crazy subplot of the playoffs. So you're sticking with your Florida and 7 call, okay? Are you going to do it?
Yeah, if they win tonight.
If they win tonight, okay. I'm going to say Vegas in 6, and I am saying that with the thought of Florida potentially winning the next 2. I agree with you about that. I just think that Florida at home, I think that crowd is going to go berserk. And that place used to be, not really a home ice advantage because, when the Rangers would play there, you would see blue jerseys everywhere. When the Lightning would play there, you see blue jerseys everywhere. And now they're in the final. I actually think there's going to be a good home ice advantage there. Do you think that home crowd's going to show up tonight?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the Tampa Bay Rays. It's Florida. You're not going to want to always go to a sports game. Tampa Bay Lightning, their crowd always shows up, of course. But you look at the Panthers, even in 2012 playoffs, they showed up in the playoffs. You look at Tampa Bay Rays, they show up almost every playoff round. So I think it's just, being in Florida, I'd rather go to the beach or a nice restaurant on the water than attend a sporting game. That's just me. I think that's a lot of the mindset they have down there. They rather just enjoy the nice Florida weather. Yeah,
that's very true with the weather and whatnot. But I'm excited for tonight's game, and I'm curious to see how Bravovsky bounces back. All right, let's go around the NHL a little bit before we get to the NBA Finals. Let's start with your team, the Devils, who beat my team in 7 games in the first round. You lose Andrew Brunette to Nashville. You keep Lindy Ruff. I think you guys are going to be one of the best 2 and the top 2 favorites to win the division next year if you guys make the right moves this summer, which I believe you guys are going to make good moves anyway. Jack Hughes is the best player in the division. How good about the Devils do you feel going forward?
Oh, I think this is the start of something special. Look, a lot of people are going to say, this was a fluke year. But it really wasn't. We got off to a hot start. We went 19-4, and not really a hot start because we struggled the first 3 games. We were 19-4 at one point, and every time we lost a game, my coworker would be worried about how they're going to bounce back. Because this is a team that we've seen in the past where they would win like 8 games in a row, and then next thing you know, they lose 8 in a row. But this team has been so much better and so much consistent, and I think it has to do with Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. They are finally stepping up. They are showing why we took them both number 1 overall, and they are stepping up. They're reaching career high in points. Nico is a great leader for this organization. So I think it's because those 2 guys stepped up. The cornerstone stepped up. Dougie Hamilton was healthy. Vanacek played well. They just need to, so I don't know how to say that word, solidify their backup position because Blackwood looks like he's going to walk. This Devils team, they're going to be a favorite to win the division for many years to come. But I want to start to see them being one of those top contenders to win the Stanley Cup. Next year, they have to go to a conference final or Stanley Cup. May not win, but that's the next step.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're going to be in the contention conversation for the next several years. I feel pretty good about the Devils long-term in that division for sure. And Jack Hughes, to me, like I said, best player in the division. And there's been some talks about Connor Hellebuck being a potential trade target for the Devils. I like Vitek Vanacek. I think he's a solid goaltender, but he kind of he flopped at times in the postseason, and that's why you're hearing those Hellebuck rumors. Do you like Hellebuck? The possibility of the Devils potentially getting him?
Well, I like the idea of Vanacek being our starting guy, but for me, it's about the playoffs. You can have a great regular season and then not show up in the playoffs. And people who don't follow the National Hockey League as much don't understand that Vanacek has struggled in the playoffs his entire career. He has like 72 career wins and maybe 33 career losses in the regular season. But with the playoffs, even dating back to his Washington days, I think he's like 1-6. His goals against is over 5. So if you could bring in Hellebuck, I know this is a contract year and he's going to be a free agent coming off a $9 million contract. The problem for me is the pay. I do not want to pay a goalie $10 million. So if you want to bring him in as a starter and see how Vanacek does as a backup to win in the playoffs, if it's a win-now move, go for it because he has experience in the playoffs. But if you're not going to sign him long-term and don't want to pay him, then keep Vanacek, see what you have out there. Maybe bring in another backup like Scott Wedgwood. But for us, it's to win in the playoffs. You could have a great regular season, but if you're not going to perform well in the playoffs, maybe Arcaro is the guy. Who knows? Maybe let Vanacek ride throughout the playoffs, ride throughout the regular season to the playoffs, and have Schmid start in the playoffs. I don't know. But I like Hellebuck. It's just the money that raises him this year.
Yes, that is an expensive contract that Hellebuck has. And Schmid was very good in that Rangers series. I felt personally with Lindy Ruff making that goaltending changed the entire series. I think if he doesn't make that move, the Rangers probably win that series in maybe 5 or 6 games. But to me, the move to Schmid changed that entire series. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. And scoring that game-winning goal in overtime was huge because it could have been 0-3 easy.
Yeah. And that's right. Game 3 was the OT game, and who scored it? Dougie Hamilton, right?
Yeah, my boy Dougie.
Yeah, your boy Dougie Hamilton scored the game winner to make it a 2-1 series, and Schmid was outstanding in that game. He was great in Game 4. He was really good in Game 5. He stunk in Game 6 and was good in Game 7, but kind of fell apart against Carolina. So the Devils, it's going to be an interesting offseason for them. My favorite team, the New York Rangers, is interesting, but I do not feel good about them long term personally, even though they had a lot of they have some young guys, but I really don't feel strong about them. Nobody's made that leap like Jack Hughes has. But the biggest question for me at the Rangers right now is their head coach. Apparently Peter Laviolette and John Hines, the former Devil coach, are the two favorites for the job. Where do you think the Rangers should go with their head coach? And I personally think that they should go with their AHL coach, Chris Knobloch.
I think they're going to go with Hines. I think Drury has connections with him. I think they played together at some type of level. So I think he's going to go with Hines. I think that's the guy for the Rangers. I don't really know who's really out there, but I think the Rangers, Chris Drury is going to have to, make a few decisions, but I think Hines is his guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Hines. I wouldn't be shocked if it's Laviolette. It feels like that Hines has passed Laviolette as the front runner for the Ranger job. And I was in favor of Chris Knobloch because I really just didn't want a coach that bounced around a lot over the past several years. And the one guy I do not want the Rangers to set foot near is Joel Quenneville, who is still not reinstated from the NHL. And New York Post reporter Larry Brooks says that the Rangers are not interested in bringing in Joel Quenneville, and hopefully he's right, because I do not want any part of Joel Quenneville. But at the same time, I do think that Joel Quenneville will coach in the NHL again, but I just do not think it's going to be for the Rangers. Do you think Joel Quenneville will coach again?
Really, you're hearing about his name lately, but I don't think an organization picks him up. I really don't. I think a lot of teams go within the system, or they go with someone that's been active and still in the game.
Right, and it's funny because you were not a big fan of the Gallant hire. I liked it at the time because I felt that the Rangers were close to winning, and then they make the conference finals, and then they get exposed in the regular season, and then again against the Devils after that series flipped, and then I changed my tune on Gallant. So I'm very interested to see who they bring in. So we already saw a trade in the NHL involving teams in the Metropolitan Division, actually. Ivan Provorov gets traded from Philadelphia to Columbus, and LA's in the deal too. What do you make of this trade?
I think it was a disaster. I think it was just teams trying to move guys. I don't see why Provorov needs to be in Columbus. I see why the Kings moved Peterson. I think it was because they have Corsello. I think they have someone else in their system. I think this is just to get their name in the headlines because the trade really didn't make sense to me.
I agree. It didn't make sense to me either. And I think the Flyers did good, recouping some picks. I didn't like it for Columbus. I agree with you. LA, I understand why they did it. I agree with you about Peterson. And the goalie you're thinking of is Phoenix Copley, who was pretty good for them as a backup goalie this year. And I like Korpisalo, the former Blue Jackets goalie. I do like Korpisalo. And I do like Elvis Merzlikins, too, ironically enough. Columbus, it's funny. They might be the worst team in the division, although Philly's pretty bad, too. So it's just weird that those two teams...
Columbus is the worst team in the league.
Yeah, probably. And... yeah, those are the two worst teams in the Metro Division, so it's weird that they made a trade with one another. Who do you think has a chance to be traded that's a big name, on any, random roster? I know Patrick Kane was the biggest name moved at the deadline, and I personally do not want the Rangers to bring him back. He could just go to Buffalo. I was way wrong about that trade, and obviously it was revealed that he was injured. But if I'm the Rangers, I let him walk. But who do you think would be the biggest name traded this offseason?
Not this offseason, but I could see the Colorado Avalanche move on from Gabe Landeskog just because he's enemies next year, and maybe they don't want to pay him. So I could see Gabe Landeskog getting moved on. I'm not sure
Ooh.
the rules and regulations trading guys that are hurt, but I could see him being one of the big names being moved. If not this year, maybe next year when he's healthy.
That's a good call. If I had to pick one, I'm going to say it's probably Mitch Marner of the Maple Leafs. They obviously, Kyle Dubas is off to Pittsburgh, and they have a new GM now, Calgary's old GM. And then I could just see them moving one of their core guys. And I'm going to say it's Marner. What do you think of the Maple Leafs potentially trading one of their big names this offseason?
Well, I see Mitch Marner being moved too, but I think if the price is right, you're not going to want to give up nothing for picks. It might be like a 1-for-1 deal. Maybe Mitch Marner for throw a name out there. I'm not really sure who, but I could see it being like a 1-for-1 deal.
Artemi Panarin?
Hey, if they want to do it, that could be a move.
Yeah, because Artemi Panarin to me is like an all offense, no defense type of player, and Marner's not as good as Panarin offensively, but he's a better defensive forward. So I could see both of those teams making a kind of trade like that. So it's going to be a fun offseason. I think we're going to see a lot of big names move this summer, just like we've had in the past. So right now we have the NBA Finals going on between the Nuggets and the Heat. And what are your thoughts through 3 games?
I think it's over. The Nuggets win this in 6.
I wouldn't really count out the Heat though, but Nuggets in 6 was my pick, so I like that pick. But I wouldn't say
Based on what I'm saying, I think the Nuggets have it, but if Miami finds a way to even it up, then I see them winning the series in 7. But if they're down 3-1, it's gonna be hard to come back. Same thing to Florida. If they're down 3-0, it's gonna be hard to come back. But you've seen stranger things happen.
Yeah, Boston almost did it against the Heat in the previous round.
Uh-huh.
So you never know what you may see in the postseason. And do you think Nikola Jokic has established himself as the undisputed best player in the league?
I think you can say best over-around player, yes, but I still think the best player in the league is Giannis when healthy.
Okay. I'll go with Jokic. I'll still take Jokic because maybe it's recency bias, but I'm going to go with Jokic. He's a triple-double machine. His team's in the finals, and Giannis low-key gets hurt a lot. Low-key. But
Yeah, he does.
But I don't hate Giannis. I'm a big fan of Giannis, and I thought Giannis was the undisputed best player in basketball for a couple years, but I think Nikola Jokic has taken the mantle. And speaking of guys making big leaps, do you think Jamal Murray has entered the conversation as a top 25 player in the NBA?
I'd even say top 15.
Oh, okay, top 15. But yeah, I really like Jamal Murray. He's been amazing in these playoffs, and I think Jokic will win the Finals MVP, but before the series, I did like a long shot bet on Murray to win it at 12-1. I just thought that was some good value on Jamal Murray to win Finals MVP. And it's funny because we're talking about Jokic and his path becoming the best player in the league. Can you say the same about Erik Spoelstra for coaches? Do you think Erik Spoelstra is now the undisputed best coach in the NBA despite being down 2-1 right now?
I think he's always been one of the best coaches in the game. He's been consistent. He's the only coach that has been there since early 2000s. I think he started like 08. Normally, you see coaches win these championships or they miss out, then they get fired. Spoelstra's a guy that's going to be there until he retires. So if you're like that, you're in my eyes, you're one of the best coaches, if not the best.
It's him and Popovich that have been there the longest. And I personally think Spo is past Popovich for the time being because the Spurs have kind of dropped off in relevancy over the past couple years, and Miami's been in the finals twice in the past 4 years, and it's impressive what this team has done like after the LeBron era. And I think that Spo has become underrated because people looked at him and said like, oh, they won in spite of him because LeBron's there, yada yada. But that was back in the early 2010s. But I really do like Eric Spoelstra as a coach, and obviously Pop's now going to be relevant again with them landing Victor Wembanyama. So I'd say Spo right now is the best coach in the league, but Popovich can easily win that back if he gets the Wembanyama-led Spurs to get on the map right away. So yeah, fun NBA Finals so far for sure. So you're sticking with Nuggets in 6?
Yeah.
Me too. I like that call, and I'm going to say Jokic wins Finals MVP. All right. One last thing before we go. The Tampa Bay Rays are still in first place in the AL East. When I came on your show a few weeks ago, you asked me who I liked in the AL East, and I was hesitant, but I said the Yankees. But I'm kind of taking that back now because when I said that, Aaron Judge was healthy. He's not healthy anymore. So I think it's either going to be your team or the Baltimore Orioles that win the AL East. But I'm still concerned with some of your team's pitching being on the injured list. But your team still finds ways to win consistently. So give me your take on the Rays right now.
I think they're just proving to everybody that it's the Rays way. It don't matter what you throw at us. We're going to find ways to win and have that system the same way. So if a guy's injured, you know what? Kevin Cash is going to throw in a Josh Fleming or Jalen Beeks from the bullpen. He's not really gonna be like, you know what, we got to call this guy up or we got to trade for someone. I like the players that we have in the system in the organization. We're gonna stick to our game plan and keep doing what we're doing because it hasn't stopped us yet.
Yeah, and I'm impressed with the Rays. I think Kevin Cash, if you guys win a division, which I think you guys are at this point, I mean, anything can change. Aaron Judge can come back and the Yankees will be within 3 games, or maybe Adley Rutschman carries the O's. And I'm a big fan of that Orioles team, and I think that they have a shot to win the division too. And I think Toronto's fallen off since I've been on your show. That was my preseason pick to win the AL East, the Blue Jays, but I was kind of wrong there. They've been disappointing, in my opinion. And even Boston's overachieved, in my opinion. I think 3 managers in the AL East should be in the conversation for AL Manager of the Year. Kevin Cash, Brandon Hyde, and, dare I say, Alex Cora. And if the Yankees were to somehow win the AL East, I would throw Aaron Boone in there as well. But I would say that 3 managers in the division, in the best division in baseball, deserve to be in the conversation for AL Manager of the Year. What are your thoughts on the just the loaded AL East in general?
Well, one of those teams would be in first place in the AL Central.
Right.
So I just think it just shows how deep it's built. No one is really bad. They're just, like the Red Sox are like maybe 34-29, whatever their record is. It's not like they have a bad team. They're just in a tough division.
Yeah, exactly. The Red Sox could finish 78-84, and that's not a bad 78-84 because they're in the loaded AL East. I'm just using them as an example if they were to finish last with that record.
I mean, that may be first place in the Central, but...
Right. The Central's just awful, and the Central was bad when I came on a few weeks ago, and same with the NL Central, and the irony is that the Guardians, who won the division a year ago, I think they're in 3rd. They might be in 2nd, but I think they're in 3rd.
Yeah, they're not looking too hot.
Yeah, and that was my preseason pick to win the division, the Guardians, because they won it last year and all the pitching. Now Shane Bieber is in trade rumors. So it's going to be interesting to see how this baseball season plays out. And before we go, I'm going to do what you did to me on your show. Bold prediction, any sport.
Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers are going to go further than Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets.
Oh, that would be something. And the Packers, the case for it would be weak NFC North, And then the AFC East is still really good with the Bills, and can't rule out the Dolphins. The Dolphins are awesome. The Patriots could surprise. They still have Bill Belichick as their coach, and their coaching staff's improved. And what if Rodgers gets hurt? I mean, like, it's not inconceivable. So that's a good one. I low-key don't hate that call, though. I don't think I join you on that one, but it's not something that would be insane per se. All right, so Doug, it was a pleasure to have you on today, and hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you, Madison. I appreciate it.
Anytime.